Good evening. Really excited to see everybody. My name is Amanda. I'm with the City of Fort Collins. I'm the Communications Director, and welcome to the State of the City. We've got a wonderful evening planned for you tonight. We've got a couple different people speaking, a couple different videos, so we're grateful to have you join us. I'm really pleased to introduce our first speaker. It's Colorado State University's president, Joyce McConnell, and before she comes up, I'm going to introduce a video that we're going to play as part of CSU's land acknowledgement. And so please join me in welcoming Joyce after this video. Thank you.
Colorado State University acknowledges with respect that the land we are on today is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations and peoples.
This was also a site of trade, gathering, and healing for numerous other Native nations.
We recognize the indigenous peoples as original stewards of this land and all the relatives within it.
As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the ties nations have to their traditional homelands are renewed and reaffirmed.
CSU is a land-grant institution, and we accept that our mission must encompass access to education and inclusion.
And significantly, that our founding came at a dire cost to Native nations and peoples whose land this university was built upon.
This acknowledgement is the education and inclusion we must practice in recognizing our institutional history, responsibility, and commitment.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council members. Welcome, everyone, to the Hall of Champions here at Canvas Stadium and to our wonderful campus of Colorado State University. For those of you who have not had the opportunity to see this video before, I want to tell you a little bit about why we have it, why it's important, and what it means to us as a university. The land acknowledgement is something we've adopted as a university community as an official statement of the university. We show it at events every time we do anything publicly or for our own CSU community. We show this to remind us, first of all, of what it means to be a land-grant university, and that there actually were land and people here before we arrived. And we were able to build a beautiful city and a beautiful campus, and very important city and important campus on land that had been important to people who were here before us. And we want to make sure that in keeping with the land-grant tradition of inclusion and access, that we acknowledge that that is true. I had an amazing experience at my investiture this fall. Jane Iron, who is a Native American Navajo, who is one of our employees, did a beautiful job of explaining the land acknowledgement, and I'm going to paraphrase what she said at the investiture because I thought it was so beautiful and moving. She said, "It is a statement of truth, gratitude, and respect, one that acknowledges the indigenous peoples who were here before us and that recognizes their enduring relationship with and respect for the land and everything within it and upon it. By offering this statement, we bring awareness about the understanding of peoples and histories that too often have been suppressed or forgotten. The land acknowledgement is part of a journey of healing and reconciliation and a recognition of our shared responsibility as the new stewards of this land. Future generations are depending on it and on us. And that is such a wonderful way, I think, to welcome you here to this campus. You all know that both Fort Collins and Colorado State University is known for our commitments to sustainability. And I see this as our sustainability programs and commitments as a continuation of that legacy of stewardship for the land. So it's something I'm extremely proud of as the president of Colorado State University. I know there's going to be some storytelling tonight. I've been told that. I'm not going to share my stories tonight because many of you have already heard them. And as one of the presidents at the school where I was before I came to this one, he was on my faculty after he stepped down from president when I was dean of the College of Law, and he would come walk down the hall, he'd sit down, he'd talk to me for about 20 minutes, and then he'd look at me and he said, well, enough about me. What do you think of me? And we'd go for another 20 minutes. And so I thought, well, I'll just avoid talking about me tonight and instead talk about Colorado State University and remind everyone, because I think you already know on some level, but this is our 150th year, which is just extraordinary. 150 years. And it's 150 years of being Colorado's only land-grant university, committed to access and inclusion and engagement and education for everyone who we can open the door to. And I think that is so important. But it's also part of the land-grant tradition to take all of this research and education and take it out throughout the state, and now we say throughout the nation and throughout the world. And we actually have our Vice President for Engagement and Extension here, Blake Naughton, and we have, where are you, Ashley? We have our Associate Vice President for Engagement and Extension. For those of you who haven't met Blake or Ashley, try to connect with them during the reception, because they'll tell you all about their passion for extending what we do at this great university out. But as we celebrate our 150th anniversary, we've discovered and known on some level that Fort Collins and CSU are like siblings, right? In all good ways and sometimes in a few scrappy ways. But from the earliest years, we've really grown up together. And so many of the people who shaped Fort Collins, also shaped Colorado State University. And I think those connections are fascinating. History tells us that Fort Collins pioneer Harris Stratton, a farmer who also represented Larimer and Weld counties in the 7th territorial legislature, so even before we became a state, he originally conceived the idea of locating an agricultural college in Fort Collins. Stratton was from Massachusetts. In the 1850s, he went to Kansas, where he became politically active in the anti-slavery and free soil movements, and even served in the Kansas legislature. But until he arrived in Fort Collins, there was no record of him advocating on behalf of education. So coming here, really, he suddenly saw this great need for agricultural education. But what spurred that interest in education? And we think the answer is that it came from Auntie Elizabeth Stone's famous cabin. Her niece, a young mother named Elizabeth Keyes, had come west after her husband died. She lived in her aunt's cabin, where she taught the first classes ever taught in Fort Collins, initially for her son, and then for children of other settlers. When the first school district was formed in 1868 or 1866, she was hired by the new school board to be the first public school teacher in Fort Collins. And in 1866, she also met and married Fort Collins bachelor farmer, future legislature, and ag college advocate, Harris Stratton. Theirs was the first marriage recorded in the new community. Along with giving the town an economic boost and some cultural prestige, education had suddenly become a more personal interest for Stratton, and the subsequent formation of a local agricultural colony and grange would only have reinforced that. While serving in the territorial legislature in 1868 and 1869, Stratton drew up some language for a bill, cribbed in part from Michigan State's founding documents. I find this fascinating. That's a personal story I'll tell you another time. But his vision went beyond the Michigan inspiration, because the college at Fort Collins would give to the sons and daughters of the farmers of Colorado an opportunity to attend college. And at that time, that was huge, right? Because women, for the most part, were frozen out of higher education throughout the nation, with very, very few exceptions. Women would attend the new college of Fort Collins, CSU, or not CSU at the time, Colorado A&M, from the very beginning. In fact, female students initially outnumbered male students, and they led the way academically, earning 11 of the 18 degrees awarded in the first 5 graduating classes. And that in itself is really fascinating. The women of the West were rocking it back then. So while Harris Stratton frequently is cited as one of the fathers of Colorado State University, I think it's fair to say that we should start to claim Elizabeth Keyes, and maybe even Aunt Stone, should quite correctly be included among its mothers. Of course, there are other dozens of names that join Fort Collins and Colorado State University. It's a relationship that's thrived for 150 plus years. Having just seen the connection video, what I want to say is one of the things that has brought us together for 150 years, believe it or not, is always being on the cutting edge of innovation. This is a site of innovation. It's no accident that this was one of the 2010 Cities of Innovation at the Smithsonian. And I think you can trace those origins back 150 years, which is that we had scrappy people who moved here were going to make a difference. And they were going to make water possible. They were going to make it possible to farm and to raise animals in a place that seemed very inhospitable. If you think back to what this landscape looked like back then, you can see that the reason that we have such a beautiful place to live now is because of innovators and visionaries who could see 150 years from now that we would all be here living in a place this beautiful, this special, this innovative, and this committed to diversity and inclusion and a community of care. So thank you all very much. It's my great honor to be the president of CSU. Great honor to be a resident of Fort Collins.
Thank you, Joyce, and thank you for being here and giving us the welcome here. We want to also welcome you and Vince to our community. It's great to have you as the 15th president of Colorado State University. And given the 150th year anniversary, that's a momentous time. And it reminds me of a quote by Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. And he said, if you want a great city, build a university and wait 200 years. So we're well on our way to being a great city. But, from the very beginning, Fort Collins and Colorado State University, Colorado Agricultural College, Colorado A&M, Colorado State University have been key parts of working together, and our alignment are an important part to one of the reasons Fort Collins is such a terrific place. So thank you, Joyce, for being here with us. You bet. And with that, I'd just like to thank everyone that has come out tonight, those of you that are joining us for this my 5th State of the City address with Darin. It's truly an honor to have great leadership within our community. And with that great leadership, I want to recognize our City Council. And with us, Mayor Pro Tem Kristen Stevens. Kristen? And she represents District 4. District 1 is Susan Gutkowski. Susan? And District 6 is Emily Gorgol. Emily. And from District 2 is Julie Piñatero. Julie. Thank you for being here with us. We also have other electeds with us here tonight, including our state representative, Jenny Arndt. Jenny, glad that you're here. Thank you, Jenny. We have James Thompson. He's Senator Michael Bennett's office. James, thank you for being here. We have Sally Anderson representing Congressman Joe Negus's office. Sally, thank you for being here. And we also have former electeds from our city council, former mayors. We have Arvid Bloom. Arvid, thank you for being here. We have Susan Kirkpatrick. Thank you, Susan. We have Karen Wykenot. Thank you, Karen. We have Ray Martinez. Ray. Thank you, Ray. And then Bob McCluskey, former council member. Bob. And then we also have Chris Nealon, former council member. Chris, great community member. And then Ben Manville, served with Ben. Thank you, Ben, for being here. And again, we also want to recognize those that are watching us on our live streaming of the State of the City 2020 tonight. And also we have 2 viewing parties, one at Pros Brewing, and we also have one at Gilded Goat Brewery. So hello to those of you that are at our viewing parties. And yeah, so I heard a lot of shucks. I should have been there. But with that, thank you for being here. And Darin, thank you. And great to join you again for the State of the City.
Thanks, Mayor. I want to say, first of all, I just want to acknowledge this room. And it is so neat to see this room full. I'd love for everyone to just, don't do this, but everyone to stand up and just look back. It's so encouraging to us as mayor and city manager, and I know our council members and our executive team partners, to see you here. The mayor, out of respect, said that this is his 5th State of the City address. He didn't say how many this is for me, so it's been a lot. This is my 15th State of the City address. And, oh, thank you. And I cannot tell you how special these nights are for us. And I'm just so grateful. So it's just, I'm taking a deep breath and looking out and just appreciate the way that you love this community, the way that you help co-create this place. And so we'll talk a lot about that up there. Tonight is sort of a unique State of the City address. There's 4 really distinct parts. And in past years, the mayor and city manager have given scripted presentations. Those were sort of the early years, and we've moved around the community. And what a fabulous place, what a fabulous room this is. And thank you, President McConnell, for your partnership too. You've been an amazing partner in the time that you've been here, and your colleagues as well. But we've moved from place to place. This evening, we have really 4 distinct parts. The first part is a video that you're going to see in just a few moments. It's about 10 minutes, 10 to 11 minutes. For those of you who are really sort of the data geeks in the room, meaning how many potholes did we fill, what was our response time, things like that, which I have to admit I'm one of you. You'll get so pay attention to the video. So our internal FCTV staff produced that, and I'm so excited about it. This document, hopefully all of you received when you came in. There's also, this is part 2 of the State of the City address. So please don't just take it home and throw it on a counter or in the recycling bin. There's a lot of really, really amazing work in here, sort of, summaries of the impact that the city of Fort Collins has as people work, play, and live, as they get educated, as they teach. And so this product also was designed in-house by our folks, cover to cover. And the third part is the mayor and I are going to be up here. And it's going to be a little bit different. We're not scripted. We're going to talk a little bit about maybe what we might call leadership narrative, or just some things that not only about him as the mayor and growing up in Fort Collins, or me going from a rural small town to city manager. That's not the point. We're going to tell a few of our own personal stories, But what we're hoping to do is to provoke in you some of your own narrative. And because as we've talked a lot about this, as we prepared for this conversation, and we're trying to get better in our own personal narratives as well, but this idea of co-creating a community relies on all of us, 170,000 people. And we all have such unique stories, and we come from such different places. We're going to try and just share a couple of things, and then maybe see what that provokes in you. And the fourth part is really the part that we like the most, and that's down there, and it's a reception where we all go down there. And I think I can speak for the mayor, and the reason why we like this the most is because we know that you're here mostly because you love this place, and we have that in common. And whether you're on the city council or you're whatever role you play, and by the way, for my colleagues from the city's executive team, many of you are in the front, I'm so grateful for your partnership, and the 2,500 colleagues that deliver 24/7, 365 services, which is a theme, 24/7, 365 here. Deeply grateful. This is a co-created organization as well. So the party, the reception, is really about just sharing what you love, sharing what you hear this evening. What did it provoke in you? What do you think we ought to be working on? What do you think we could do better at? This is a community that's really trying to go, I think, from here to here, and we're very intentional about that. So with that, I want to let you know this video is about 10 to 11 minutes long. So sit back and enjoy it, and we'll be back up there in just a moment. The four community members, actors in this film, are in the room, and they're highlighted also in this packet. So if you get a chance, take a look. But with those four, including our little girl, would you please stand so you can be recognized? All right. Great. I was sitting next to President McConnell, and she said, "It makes me want to live here. It makes me feel like should move here and live here." Something like that, sorry. You may not know this, but she actually accepted the job of president of Colorado State sight unseen. She had spent time at Denver International Airport meeting with the Board of Governors and others, but she hadn't even been here. So you made a really, really good choice. Really, really good choice. Yeah. Well, I didn't introduce the video that, this is really intended to be a day in the life of a few of our residents. And I think it gives you a really, really good glimpse into the context of the various city services that we provide here. And many of the services that are provided weren't highlighted, unfortunately, because we didn't have unlimited time. But I oftentimes, when we onboard new coworkers at the city, which we do 2 times a month, oftentimes I'll sort of stop and say, so look out the window, and if we all had 3 to 5 minutes to say, let's ID what city services are within that view shed, you could probably pretty quickly get to 20, 30. If you're really, really savvy, you could get to maybe 50 different services that are outside that window. But I love the way that our FCT TV staff produced this and really sort of demonstrated the day in a life. And so we think it tells to a great extent the state of our city. So thanks you all for participating in that. So to deliver these world-class municipal services, we talk, first of all, you have to have a vision that isn't just about being average. We aspire to be average is not something that my coworkers and I, nor the mayor and city council, nor what we've inherited from our past. I can't find average anywhere. You can go back 20, 30, 40 years, we can't find average. Today we use the words world-class municipal services. It takes a vision to think aspirationally, which some of us do have concerns that small and medium-sized cities around the country and even some big cities aren't thinking big. They're also in many cases not given permission to think big. And what you all have done and the people that you elect and the support that you show this municipal government, you allow us to think big, and we're deeply, deeply grateful for that. Many of my colleagues probably wouldn't be in their roles if you didn't give us permission to do that. So I want to just share a little bit about many of these jobs, the couple thousand that we have. What I do know is that if there's a lot of little kids that meet police officers and want to be police officers when they're small, and actually they grow up to be police officers sometimes. Firefighters, if you have a chance to take a little boy or a girl to a fire station and meet some of our firefighters or Chief DeMint or others, or Chief Swoboda and police, or there are hundreds of coworkers, and they go in the station and they climb in the ladder trucks and the fire engines and emergency vehicles. Lots of little kids, when you expose them to that, want to be in those roles when they grow up. Lots of little kids think about wanting to be engineers and all kinds of different roles. We have a lot of jobs too that little kids don't grow up thinking they want to do. We have a lot of jobs that are really, really critical to how we live, work, and play in this town in 24/7, 365 world class. I think about the cemetery. I think about our wastewater plant and the dedicated men and women who serve in these in these various roles. I think about accountants and city planners and HR and IT and people who are filling those 6,000 plus potholes and on and on and on. Well, so I have an interesting story. I grew up in Northern California in a little town called Sebastopol, California. At the time it was about 6,000 people, and now I think it's about 7,000 people. It's a really, really small town. My grandparents were dairy farmers, and they lived a few miles away. And my mom worked for a newspaper, and my father was a mechanic. I did not grow up with a suit and tie on. And it's interesting because in this role that I have, lots of people think, I had one colleague one time said to me, I was down in the IT department, and her name's Jane, and I had blue jeans on a Friday. She's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you own a pair of blue jeans. So we get put into these, we get put into positions, and people make conclusions. Interestingly, so of the many people who really had a big impact on me growing up, my mom and my grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins and so forth in Sebastopol and Santa Rosa, California, I had an uncle, my Uncle Wayne, and oh, by the way, I didn't say this. So like the mayor, I played sports a lot when I was a kid. And I remember my mom saying to me one time, I didn't want to play baseball. I didn't want to play Little League that season. My mom said, that's great. Don't play Little League, but I promise you I'm going to have a lot of chores for you. You're not going to watch TV. And I said, I'm playing Little League. I'm good. But when we weren't in school and we were out on break, we spent our summers on my grandparents' dairy farm. And they farmed Jersey cows, milk cows. And we did all kinds of things. We shoveled cow manure. We, helped our Uncle Ray pull calves out of cows, and we did all kinds of things. And some people think that's why I make city council look so easy, working with the council. That if you were, no offense, council, I'm not. This isn't. Okay, that didn't go so well. Susan and Kristen and Julie and Emily, and I didn't mean it the way it sounded, but when you're working a farm, it makes this job in so many ways look so easy. And so back to my story. My Uncle Wayne was a city planner in the Bay Area, and he grew up on that farm as well. He was about 10 or 15 years older than me. And so when he became a city planner in the Bay Area, I'll never forget my Uncle Wayne would constantly come up to Santa Rosa and say, hey, come on into the city, come into San Francisco, and let's ride BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit System. I don't know if anyone's ridden BART, but it goes under the bay. And, as a kid about this big, riding in a train below the ocean is like really, really cool. Walking on the Golden Gate Bridge. I remember there were many times where we sat down and we had blank sketch paper, and he wanted me to sketch the skyscraper of the city. As I reflect back now as a city manager, I mean, there was no way that I would have foreseen myself being a city planner, then going into civil engineering, and then ultimately a city manager. So what my Uncle Wayne did was he kind of took me by the fire station, and he exposed me to his work as a city planner. And then he took time to explain what was not only on the skyscape and the bridge and under, but he also started talking about what was sort of under the street. And so my colleague Kevin Gertig, who's our utilities director, this deeply resonates with Kevin, that it's, without all these pipes and these really connected systems, well planned out systems, we don't have the city that we do. So I guess the reason why I wanted to share that is that, I think about my Uncle Wayne. I think about him and the impact that he had on me. I think about all these little kids, boys and girls, that are brought to fire stations and meeting police officers and so forth. And then also all the different roles that we play in this community that you all represent, the 300 of you. And I'm pretty convinced as we look out the next 25 to 30 years, I think we need people to really, really talk about with these aspiring, curious, creative little folks about building community and about kindness and about hard work and about all those different things. So, Mayor, how about you? How about a day in the life?
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you telling your story. I mean, it shines a lot of light on why you're doing what you are today. You know, I grew up in Fort Collins. This is my hometown, so I've spent a day in the life of Wade in Fort Collins.
In fact, I did the math earlier today. About 20,000 days in Fort Collins for this guy. I could be wrong, Gene. Just a couple days, but isn't that awesome?
Well, it's a great community, and I just and being in this Hall of Champions and walking in here, and you know, on this wall I see the coach that I played for, Sarkar's Lanian, and back there a couple of players that I played with, Al Bubba Baker and Mike Bell, and so sports is a big part of my growing up. I grew up just 2 houses off of campus, and I would always come over and watch basketball and football on campus, and I had older brothers, but I was always kind of the runt, if you will. I was the short, little, stocky kid that you know, that often didn't get selected to get into the game. But through the city, I played in junior All-American football and basketball through the Parks and Rec, and I remember going to City Park and spending a lot of my time there around the year. And I remember at one point somebody said, "What's your favorite sport?" And I said, "Whatever season it is." And that included during the summer, I would swim, and I would swim on a swim team at City Park Pool. And I remember my dad made a comment that, you know, out of all those that you're swimming against, there was more underwater of you than anyone else. I was the bigger kid, and so growing up was, you know, I was the short, little, stocky kid, and I remember playing baseball, t-ball, my first year, 5 or 6 years old. And my mom and I went and got the jersey, and it was a t-shirt, and brought it home. And we were in the kitchen. She said, "Try it on." And I put it on, and I couldn't get it on. The neck was too small to get over my head. And so here was the short, little, stocky kid. I couldn't get the t-shirt on. And you know, my mom was terrific. She said, "You know, we can fix that." She cut open the collar a little bit and fixed it with some stitches, and I was able to put on the uniform. And so a lesson I learned from my mom at that time was, you know, you know, you can overcome some of those difficulties, but there's a question of equity. In that case, the t-shirt didn't fit me, so I learned about being included and having a t-shirt that I could wear to be part of the team. And that's one of the things that I think about a lot in our community. When we talk about everyone in our community to be an active co-creator in a community, we have to think about equity and inclusion for everyone within our community. And those lessons, and that particular lesson, like from my mom, stayed with me, and staying with sports, and I'd always find myself being a captain of the team, like in junior high and then in high school. And I remember one day when it was during the summer, it was before school started, but there was summer football camp. And I went to Poudre High School, and I was out in the field and practicing, and I saw a neighbor down the street come to and talk to my coach, Coach McClary, and said, and I couldn't for the life of me, why would Les Madison be talking to my coach? And my coach waved me over, and I went over, and he said, "There's been an accident." And that accident included your mom, and I got in the car and went to the hospital with Mr. Madison. And my mom and my aunt were killed in an accident on South Shield Street along what is now Longview Trail and down what was the old brick factory. And my aunt, my mom were killed, and my cousin and my brother were injured significantly. And I just remember going to the hospital, and then just as you would, I think just trying to come to grips with the many things that are going through your mind, and when you're losing someone that's so important to your life, and in that case, the little things that, that you missed and so forth. And it was sometime after that and wrestling with that event that, I made a conscious decision. And I remember this very distinctly. I can use it for good or not. And with that, I think, I used it for good. That next what had been my junior year in high school, I dedicated that season to my mom. And I played with her memory and her support. And with that, I think about that kind of event and that leadership, and I think about how that can influence one another. And what it has done to me and what I think about today is I think it inspired in me at least a kind of leadership and the kind of my involvement within the community. Because my mom was very active in the high schools and so forth, and she created at Poudre High School, but subsequently an award was created in all the high schools in Fort Collins called an Eleanor Troxell Award that recognizes those that are accomplished in academics, in citizenship, and athletics. And it's not the star player, it's those that participate and play part of the team. And so, there's a message there to me about and how I've, I think, translated that into my life. And I'm amazed in a lot of respects that I'm still in the community that I was brought up in, and been able to translate, those kind of personal lessons to me in that my leadership within the community. So this is in part due to every one of us goes through difficult times and have difficult situations. And what happens to us matters. And it's up to us to actually do with that in a way that can help further ourselves in certain ways. And sometimes it's very challenging. And I recognize that today in people in our community where, and you may not know at certain times when somebody is really at a difficult point.
So that's part of the point is we don't know what's going on in anyone's life at any given time. And I think that just recognizing that it's possible as we're out and about in the community, or we're leading small groups or big groups, or what people bring to their day, we oftentimes have no visibility into. We may not be aware that someone just had the worst day of their life yesterday. There might be people in the room that the worst day of their life was just recently, like really, really bad stuff. And we also don't know if someone had the best day of their lives. And so, for me, again, when I get to speak with my colleagues, as we onboard new colleagues, what I try to say to them is just understand, we're complicated organisms and people, and just be cognizant of what someone may be bringing to the job, or maybe bringing to the neighborhood, or might be bringing to a council debate, or it might be whatever the issue is. I remember, so my wife and I, we go to Timberline Church, and about 2 years ago or so, I don't think Deb was with me. I can't remember because I was so focused on this person. This woman came up to me and she said, "You're our city manager, right?" And I said, "Yep, I am." And she said, "I have to tell you," she said, "we love Fort Collins. And by the way, what's really cool is, what's neat about being in a job for so long and having our own TV station and stuff like that, people will recognize community leaders from council meetings or from speeches or whatever. But I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, 97 times out of 100, when I'm going around in Fort Collins, people come up and say, 'Thank you for what you do. Thank you for the city that we live in. Thank you.' My standard response is it takes a great board of directors. I promise you, it takes a great board of directors. It takes a lot of people to do this. Thank you. I'll share that with them." This person, though, had a really unique twist on it. So again, she asked, and I said, yep, city manager. And she said, my husband and I, we love this place. We every Tuesday night, I may be exaggerating slightly, but she said this, we open a bottle of wine at 6 o'clock. We go downstairs to our basement in our theater, and we grab some crackers and cheese, and we watch the city council meeting. And I'm like, that is awesome. And maybe I'm exaggerating every week, but I think it was very often. And you know what she said? She said, I love that almost every meeting you talk about world class. I love that. It resonates so much with my husband and I. And I'm thinking, that resonates for Deb and I as well, because world class for us, Fort Collins is indeed, right? Whether it's beautiful flowers, whether it's the holiday lights, whether it's Max, whether it's Poudre School District in K-12, whether it's Colorado State, whether it's a safe home and a safe place, and I work with people I love, and on and on and on. But she said, we've been thinking, what does world class look like to someone who's different than us? What does world class look like to, and I can't make this up, I promise you, what does world class look like to someone who's bound to a wheelchair the rest of their lives? What does world class look like to someone who's in extreme poverty? Or worse yet, they may not have a home. What does it look like to someone who's got a cognitive limitation that really, and this is what I call a disruptive conversation. This was a, world class. We're gonna be doing 1 to 10 gig service. A broadband will be one of 2 handfuls of cities doing this. We're gonna look at another Max lines at some point. So that, with a lot of my colleagues and the council, I think led to conversations about what we call hard to reach populations. It's really easy for us to reach to similar people. We've been having conversations with similar people in Fort Collins for a long time, and you all are a big part of those, and I love you for that. But it was a disruptive conversation. And so the question is how do we really get better at these disruptive conversations that not only is for my wife and I and this woman and her husband and many of us in the room, but how do we ensure that for 170,000 plus people? That's the tricky part. So I think it's important to consider all the perspectives and experiences. And I know that this city council is very intentional about it. I will tell you, I have learned more from this city council, this mayor and city council, than in the 24 years that I've been with the city in such short period of time, around topics like inclusivity and equity and diversity, topics about attainable housing, like not just affordable housing, but workforce housing, that people who work here can actually live here, and then people who can't, who don't have homes are able to get homes.
And I would just point out that we've had a couple of incidents in the last couple of months that really show that, and that it's not always world class for everyone. There was an event of pastor, and where there's a racial slur of the pastor, and he's African American, and that happened within our community. And also there was a graffiti. Some young boys and with anti-Semitism, and that's not our community that we want to be, and we all have to be responsible. And how do we address these kind of issues as they come up, and how we do come together to create a welcoming place as a safe community for all within our community.
So equity, inclusion, diversity is an area that we're getting better in. We've got a lot of ground to cover. We've always kind of done it in small steps, so that, we'll look for opportunities for leaps and bounds as well. We'll go real hard at it. But we also believe that this is a journey. And so I want to say that we're still learning in this space. My team and we've got some amazing people who are really teaching us. We've got folks who are helping us with our various lenses, and some of those are elected officials, some of those are my colleagues sitting in the front row, right smack in front of me. But we're learning. And we think that this requires the entire community to be intentional about this. And so I think you're going to be hearing more about that as we are looking forward. You're going to be hearing more about it. I think one way that we focus our attention, and I know some people sort of, oh gosh, here he's going to talk about Baldrige again, but I'm going to do it just for a second. You know, the Baldrige, I heard that laugh way back there. The Baldrige criteria for us, there's no perfect criteria. I've come to, in my leadership experience, what I've come to realize, if you think great results are just going to happen organically with good, capable, hardworking, competent, dedicated people, I think your odds are slim. If you have a framework, and whatever framework you choose, if you're leading teams or communities, we've chosen the Malcolm Baldrige framework, which focuses on leadership and strategy, and they call the voice of the customer, we'll call the voice of our residents, our community, the voice of your workforce, the people who are delivering these things daily basis. Pay attention to the data and to the processes, and by all means try and drive your results to head up and to the right or get better. Again, Fort Collins is not going from here to here. Fort Collins is trying to go from here to here. And so that's the framework that we use. A couple of weeks ago, I heard a story about Coach Wooden, who's a UCLA former basketball coach. He's passed away, known throughout basketball and the industry. I mean, probably the most famous and well-accomplished coach in the history of college basketball. And the mayor and I just this morning were watching a YouTube around a former player named Bill Walton, who was talking about Coach Wooden, and he was talking about he would talk to these like top high school recruits coming into UCLA to play for him. And he said, first and foremost, I need you to focus on how you put your socks on. Kind of crazy, right? His point is, and the way that you tie your shoes. The details matter. Because if you're not putting your socks on right, you're going to get blisters when you're playing, and you're not going to be able to play, and you're not going to be able to score. That matters. But he said, if you put your socks on right, and you take the time. This video that we saw from Bill Walton, he's actually talking about the coach walking him through the details, and they're all like, "Seriously, coach? I mean, we're like all-American recruits, and that's what he focused on." And so as we were talking, and I was, reflecting on that story that I had heard, it kind of, it kind of says to me the fundamentals matter a lot. You've got to get those fundamental, basic things in place. And so, the question is are we putting our socks on correctly as a community? Are we all doing that as we're co-creating? And I think the Baldrige framework has helped us do that. But
right. And the details do matter. And I think tonight, as we tell our stories, it's really that everyone has their own story, and everyone's stories matters. And I think in these difficult times, when oftentimes there aren't conversations, in fact, they're very hostile conversations, we really need to, I think, change that in a way that we share our stories, we share it with each other, and I think we begin to humanize our conversations and understanding with and about each other. And I think that's one of the things that Fort Collins has always done so well is I think the people tend to be good and friendly, but that doesn't mean we're perfect. And when there's an incident or there's some things that are very difficult, I think we need to take time and listen and to understand and to share our story. And that's one of the things that I hope that is coming out tonight is there is a power in stories and relating to one another. and it takes courage. When last April we had a municipal election, and we had 3 new council members, and we had a retreat shortly thereafter. And we took the time, each of us, to listen and to watch a Brene Brown TED Talk on the power of vulnerability. And what that is about is really opening up ourselves. To be vulnerable is really to be courageous and to really open yourselves up to those kinds of conversations. I think a lot of time being brought up that you might be, be tough and be strong, and it's oftentimes just the opposite. And being open and honest with yourself, and make yourself vulnerable to having that kind of conversation. And so as things are happening at the national level, we should think about what we do here in Fort Collins. And I think we can be different. I think we've always been different in very positive sorts of ways. And as a community, we need one another. And with that, I think that we can share our personal stories.
So I'm going to wrap up my comments by saying I'm grateful for the opportunity to be in this role. It's been amazing, and I love it, and I want to continue doing it. And I think about the mayor is going to say the state of the city is blank, but I want to say I think that our community is thriving. I think that when I look at the 24/7, 365 operations of the city, when I get to hang out with people who are helping shape the future, the next 25 to 30 years, as we talked, there's a bit in the video about city plan, I believe. The city of Fort Collins, our community, is on an amazing trajectory. And so, again, I'm grateful to be up here with the mayor and to have your eyes and ears for just a few minutes tonight. Kind of a little bit different state of the city, right? But we felt it was important to tell a little bit of our story and our narrative as community leaders and the folks that we work with so closely. And I really want to thank you for being here.
And as we close, I would just like to say, serving as your mayor is truly an honor for me. And I think a lot about the legacy, those that have gone before us that have really made this community what it is, and our responsibility today. It's truly an honor for me to serve with the council that I serve with. They're truly dedicated civil servants and making our community a better place and for all. And they bring great intellect and great conversation and great heart to our community. And so the state of the city is strong, and we're very fortunate to be in this place. And it's also our responsibility, all of us, to keep it in a position going forward. And that's the challenge that we all have. And with that, really striving to have these deeper kind of conversations, and for all of us the room to grow and improve, and to make sure that we're doing it with all of the voices in our community, and reflecting upon the Brene Brown and the courage. It takes courage to make adjustments so others feel included. It also takes courage to make others and to make the best out of a really hard experience. And it also takes courage to tell the stories. And with that, it's up to us to have courage and empathy for one another. And this is how we can all build a stronger community for everyone together. And so as we go have a reception, let's take the time to tell our stories tonight and onward within our community. And let's share with one another. And let's be sure and also meet the stars of our video. But Darin, thank you. And for all of you that have come out and all of you that are watching, thank you so much. And have a good night.
Good job.